During the long green season, the ordinary time, the season after Pentecost, one of the recurring themes that we often have, whatever the lectionary cycle we're in, is the idea of discipleship. And we will begin picking up on some of these themes as we move deeper into the fall. This Sunday's gospel follows, of course, right out on the heels of Peter's confession of Christ as the Messiah. And right after that, Jesus starts to talk about how he is going to suffer when they get to Jerusalem and even be put to death. And immediately, Peter, coming right off of this high of confessing Christ as the Messiah, says, oh, that should never be. We have to protect you from this. And Jesus rebukes him very strongly and ends up saying, whoever follows me has to take up their cross. Follow me, to deny yourself. And of course, Jesus' whole life and ministry was all about extending God's love here on earth. And the idea that even at the expense of your personal comfort or even your life, that we are to show God's love around us, that we are to be that serious and that diligent in proclaiming the love of God to those around us. As a little bit of a foreshadow to that, in the reading from Romans that precedes that, Paul writes to love one another with mutual affection, to outdo one another in showing honor. And this idea that we are, even at our own inconvenience, to show love for other folks, and that our biggest action of discipleship to Jesus Christ is in proclaiming that love, the grace and the mercy that we have experienced, and to express that to everyone around us. So those themes of discipleship, and just as importantly, the discipleship of love, will recur all through the service on Sunday. Our opening hymn uses the very familiar melody of Abbott's Lee, which starts off with that big octave leap. And it talks about, gracious Spirit, give us the tools to show your love in the world. At the sequence, the hymn between the reading from Romans and the gospel, we'll be singing Be Thou My Vision, one of our favorite hymns here at St. John's. But again, talking about keeping our eyes fixed on Jesus as our example for how to show love in the world. And then we'll be ending with that wonderful Welsh tune, Blaenwarn, where we sing, Lord, whose love through humble service. Again, talking about showing God's love in the world around us. Thinking about love, of course, one of the great things that brings to mind is that familiar chant, the Ubi Caritas. Wherever there is charity and love, God himself is there. And the choir will be singing a setting of the Ubi Caritas at communion by the American composer Richard Prue, and it uses that very familiar chant melody all the way through. Oftentimes when we sing other familiar settings of that text, by Duraflay, for instance, we get only the first verse. Richard Prue in this setting sets the entire poem, and so it's a little bit of a lengthier text, even within the confines of a fairly modest musical setting. At the offertory, the choir will also be singing another familiar piece in the choral repertoire, Perry's Dear Lord and Father of Mankind. It's interesting that this text by John Greenleaf Whittier, who was a Quaker, is taken from a longer poem called The Brewing of Soma. And Whittier, a very good Quaker, really wrote this poem very expressly to push against some of the more elaborate expressions of Christianity, and especially liturgical worship. And in it, he writes about the evils of music and incense and vain matins and vespers. And so it's kind of funny that this text and this musical setting by Perry has become so popular in the Anglican choral tradition and the Episcopal Church, where we have music and incense and occasionally even have vain vigils. It's kind of funny that the words, which do very eloquently speak about a devotion, a discipleship to Jesus Christ, that maybe some of his ideas of that discipleship are a little bit different than ours, and yet the poetry and the music are so beautiful in their expression. So we hope that as you continue to experience God's love in your life and show it forth, that you will join us here for worship at St. John's Cathedral. And remember, this is our last Sunday of the Lakeshore Church, so you can join us in the chapel at 8, at Lakeshore Park at 9, or here in the Cathedral Church at 10:30. But we hope wherever you choose to engage with us, that you will worship with us here at St. John's Cathedral.